This is Tower Tycoon, the very first game I published and advertised on Roblox. And I haven't touched this game in over 5 years. I've definitely learned a lot about developing since then, so today I'm going to be updating this game for the first time in 5 years. But first, let me tell you a little bit about how the game works. Everybody in the game has their own tower. Players get jobs from this character named Blabby. No, not Blobby. Blobby is his brother, and you can also talk to him. But Blabby is the one that helps unemployed you get a job so you can build your tower. You can either pick weeds at a farm or go fishing to earn coins, which you then spend on floors for your tower to build it up higher and higher and higher. And that's pretty much the entire game. Now I know what you're thinking, that this is the most fun looking game on the history. Okay, it's a terrible game. Honestly, this is one of the worst games I've ever seen on the platform. So let's update it after 5 years and make it fun. Okay, let's get started with the map. And if you've seen my channel before, you probably know I am awful at making maps. So to help with this process, I actually used an asset pack from Shop Happy. I'll leave the link down in the description if you'd like to check it out, so huge thanks to Happy for providing that. I added teleporters for both the lake and the farm where you're gonna go work, as well as some paths that would lead to the different towers. Now believe it or not, I actually had the idea for this video like 10 months ago, last year, so I already had modeled some towers that I just imported into this game to use for this project. After that, I brought in a leaderboard and some trees and other assets to fill in the map, and it looked pretty good. After that, I spent about a half an hour scripting the actual Tower Tycoon system, but I decided to make it different than the original game. In the original Tower Tycoon, every story that you build on your tower is exactly the same, but that's kind of boring. So I decided there would be different floors that you could unlock that would have different rarities, so as you keep building, it picks a random floor and you have a chance to build a super rare floor. It's totally not an RNG game. I don't know what you're talking about. I created a module with all the different floors and then assigned a number to each of those floors depending on their rarity. That way I could pick a random number and choose which floor the player got. Okay, now that I finished scripting the definitely not RNG Tycoon system, I think it's time to add some UI. If you don't know what that is, it's basically all the different buttons you see on your screen. In simulator games, there are often buttons for pets and things like that, so let's go ahead and create some UI for the towers. I ended up making a little hammer vector for the frame in Photopea. For my first time actually trying to make vectors, I think it turned out okay. I put the vector in the corner of a frame and added some text labels so that people could see what floor they unlocked, as well as the rarity. I also added some little scripting magic to make the buttons pop out at you. This used tweening, which basically just makes the buttons smoothly come in and out of the frame. And there we go, now we had a way for players to be able to see what floor they unlocked. Now if you remember from the original game, there were two incredible characters in that game. Yes, I'm talking about Blobby and Blabby, and I think it's time we make the new versions of them. Now, I'm not a modeler, so the first attempt at it kind of just looked like a poop emoji, but after a few tries, I actually got it looking like I wanted to. Okay, I imported Blobby and Blabby into Studio, and now it's time to actually make them talk. There is an old Roblox dialogue system, which is what I used in the original game, but it just kind of looks terrible, so I'm gonna try and make my own from scratch. I made a dialogue module script that made it super easy to customize, so then I could create any conversation I wanted with preset responses. Basically, the script makes it so that Blobby says something like, "Hello, welcome to Tower Tycoon," and then it waits for the player to choose one of the possible responses, and then responds depending on what they picked. This module made it super easy to make Blabby. I just had to change the responses in the text, that's all. But it was kind of hard to tell which one was Blobby and which was Blabby, so I decided I was gonna do something different for Blabby. Introducing Thug Blabby. Yeah, I just put a backwards hat on Blabby and called it a day. He kind of rocks it though. Okay, so now you can tell which one's Blobby and which one's Blabby. But the conversation felt kind of stale. I mean, there were no sounds. All you could see was text. So I decided it's time to do what I do best. Create some sound effects. Okay, so after making those horrendous sounds, I added them to Roblox, and now Blobby and Blabby can speak. Sort of. I pitched one of them way up and the other one way down. Okay, so now that that was done and the map was done, it was time to move on to the next thing. I decided for this game to have a max height to your tower, so because there was a maximum height, I also wanted people to be able to delete floors of their tower. So let's go script delete mode. I made a little vector of a trash can and then scripted an entire system that probably took me like a half an hour to make. Basically, it detected whether a player was in delete mode, and if they were, and they were hovering their mouse over a piece, it would allow them to be able to delete that piece by clicking on it. Then I just had to call a function to lower all the other floors, that way there weren't any floating floors on your tower. Cool, now you can delete floors of your tower. Okay, but one of the big parts of this game is that you have to work to get coins, but we haven't added any place to work yet, so I guess it's time to go make the farm. I made the farm map really similar to the main map, but just changed it so there was a gigantic barn and some different things to do. I'll let you play the game for yourself and figure out how to work at the farm, but I finished making the map and scripting the farm system so you could actually get coins. I also added some anti-cheat to stop you hackers. Yep, I'm looking at you, buddy. After that, I re-scripted part of the tower system just to make sure that players had enough coins to build the next floor. And that was the core of the game that I had made 5 years ago. But I feel like I can still expand this game a lot more. I decided that once you reach the max height, you would be all the way up in the clouds next to a moon. I also was going to put a rocket ship on the moon to signal that the next update of the game you were going to be able to travel to the moon. So I hopped into Blender and created this low poly rocket ship, imported into Studio, and put it on top of the moon. I also modeled some cartoony clouds to put all around the moon so it looked like you were all the way up in the sky. Then I added some fire particles underneath the rocket so it looked like it was on and ready to go. So yeah, make sure to go like the game so that I know to update it with the moon update. Now I realized that this game was also starting to feel like a simulator, so I decided to add rebirths. Basically, once you have enough coins, you're going to be able to rebirth your tower, and it would delete everything in your tower and start from scratch. But to make up for that, you would also start to earn coins a lot faster. I made some UI for the rebirthing and created a brand new vector for it as well, and I also scripted the system to allow for rebirthing. It used what's called an exponential function to determine how much the rebirth should cost. Basically, that just means every time you rebirth, it's going to become exponentially more expensive since you're earning coins faster. See, this is what school is for. They teach you these things like exponential functions so that you can then make super cringe games on Roblox. Okay, anyway, I made the rebirth system and we're good to go. I also finished setting up the leaderboard, and now it displays whoever the top players with the most rebirths are. Okay, so the game was really coming along, but I wanted to add a couple more things. The first thing I wanted to add were pets, because this is kind of now a simulator game. For that, I borrowed this pet system that I've used in a lot of my other videos and just used it in this game as well. Then I made a little pet vector on Photopea and added some UI, and we were good to go. After that, I added a shop where people could buy coins, game passes, and a special egg. Okay, the game is starting to look really polished, but there's one more thing I need to do before it's ready for release, and that is create a thumbnail and icon. And if I decided to draw the icon myself, it would probably look something like this, and I'm only half kidding. So I decided to hire a professional UX and UI designer for this job. It only took him a few hours, and here's what he came up with. I like it so much more than what I could have done. So huge thanks for creating those for me. Couldn't have done this without you. And then I uploaded them to Roblox, and the game was finally finished. Bear in mind there are probably bugs because I only made this in a couple of weeks, but you can go play it now. The link is down in the description, and it is out and ready for you guys. Huge thanks to the Blindsy, Pear, Deja Vu, Extus, and Yucktpie for all supporting me on Patreon or on the channel. If you want to get your name shouted out at the end of my videos, either click the join button on my channel or join my Patreon. The link is down in the description. Otherwise, make sure to join the Discord server, also down in the description, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.